Yes, let's begin. The return of Seattle Sports Secrets for the
With cameras
first
this
time.
time.
Yeah,
That
for the
kind of
first
work.
time with video. For anyone who's seeing this that doesn't remember, uh, we briefly did, what was it, two or three
It was like
episodes about
it
a
was like
year
three
ago?
episodes, yeah,
Yeah.
before this.
We did three episodes about a year ago. And boy, has a lot changed since in that year. So
Understatement of the century, my man.
yeah, so a lot to talk about. Let's get right into it. I'm Ryan Hanna. Without further ado, shall we start with the good, the bad, and the ugly? Tristan, what's your take here?
Yeah. Well, there is definitely a good, a bad, and an ugly. That is for sure. Especially with Seattle sports right now. Though you could technically all call it ugly at this point. So
Yeah, that's true. It's a fair argument.
yeah. Should we just jump in with the ugliest of the ugly?
Absolutely. What do you think at first? Because I'm sure we have different ideas of who's ugly and who's bad at the moment.
Let's just talk the new guy first. Let's talk Kraken.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you know, when we say good, bad, and the ugly, like to me, that's the crack. That's this inaugural season for the Kraken is just like it. I don't really know what to make of it because they're streaky and then they look bad, and it's a mix of a number of different issues that when you like mix them all together, it just gets this product that is honestly kind of unattractive to a relatively new hockey market.
Yeah, it's not been good. And again, it's a number of things. But then again, expansion teams in Seattle really don't have the best of track records. I mean, look at the Mariners in
Yeah.
76 or the Seahawks of that same year. Like, it's not been good. Expansion has not been kind to Seattle, at
Yeah.
least for the first year. So the Kraken will probably work out. It just might take a while. And by a while, I mean like 20 years.
Let's try and avoid that, please.
Yeah, I
No,
mean,
yeah,
obviously, we don't want them to fail,
yeah,
but if
yeah.
just given on
But
history, it'll probably be a thing.
yeah, no, actually, I think you bring up a good point, and when you say expansion, it makes me think back to the expansion draft and how excited we were, and some of the picks that they made. Like Carey Price was available from, I believe it was
It
the
was Montreal, yeah.
Montreal. Yep. They didn't take him, which certainly would have been a win now move, but that's kind of, I think, the strategy of Francis in their front office is a more slow long-term build as opposed to win now, which is kind of what we were, dare I say, hoping for, given what we had seen from the Vegas Golden Knights, um, and what they did, which honestly is just an anomaly for any sport.
Yeah.
It's really
It was just
unrepeatable.
ridiculous what Vegas did.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't think it was ever going to be attainable for the Seattle Kraken via the draft, just because the rule changes, and they made sure not to let Seattle kind of plunder the league the way Vegas did back in 2017, 2018. Um,
Yeah,
so
and that's the
yeah,
thing. Like GMs learned from Vegas. They learned from doing that, and I think Seattle tried too hard to follow in their footsteps because they didn't have a single trade during the expansion draft. Not a single one. I
I
would have
mean,
expected at
you could
least one.
say you could say, well, they did have Tyler Pitlick, but that's like a third round pick, and
Yeah, and he's not even on the Flames anymore. I think he got
And I
traded
mean
not too long
there
ago.
was the Toronto Pittsburgh deal, I believe it was, where they protected someone, and then Seattle just took Jared McCann anyway,
Yeah.
which was actually one of their hits in the draft, and that was a great pick.
Yeah.
Um,
I definitely like McCann. Basically,
yeah,
both the players we got from Pittsburgh are good with McCann and Tanev.
yeah. Well, unfortunately, Tanev is now out. Um, but yeah, and going back to and kind of expanding on Jared McCann a bit, I think him and Yanni Gord are probably the two most polarizing players at the team has at the moment. But and those are guys that you definitely for a long slow build like the Kraken have chosen. Those are guys that you want to keep around and you want to pay them, especially if you're not going to be great like we've seen, because the defense is probably the biggest thing. And I remember people and experts alike saying this team actually looks okay on paper defensively. Like, how are they going to do scoring? And granted, it's all been bad, but the defense has not helped an already shaky goaltending group. So that kind of duo of bad defense and already shaky defense, it just makes the goaltending look even worse than it is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, coming into the season, we thought the defense was going to be the strength of this team. And then who's performed outside of maybe Alexiak when he's healthy?
Yeah,
Like,
Adam Larson sure hasn't.
I mean, Larson's had his moments, Gio's had his moments, but for the most part, they're just pylons back there, pretty much. You can just
Yeah, I
knock
mean
them over.
the way they it is so frustrating because they'll get they'll get going and they'll get into the offensive zone, and the offense is a whole other story in and of itself. But then they'll give up the puck, and whoever they're playing, they'll start coming back down the ice, and the defense and Gio or Larson, Giordano Larson, those guys are supposed to be there. Vince Dunn, actually, I take that back. Vince Dunn has done a good job, but Larson, Giordano, um, Blackwell. I mean, those guys they allow too many high pressure, danger scoring chances, and for a guy like Philip Grubauer, who is already having just a weird season, to be honest, because it looks like, because I know, and from what I've seen, somewhere inside of him, there is a very good Vesna worthy goaltender inside of Philip Grubauer.
Oh, yeah,
But at the
absolutely.
same time, it's like he also looks like the worst goalie in the league. So you've got this sort of Jekyll and Hyde with Grubauer, who is not being helped at all by his own defense.
Yeah,
So it's
no,
like, if
absolutely.
you're the Kraken, what do you do?
I honestly don't know. I mean, this is a if you look at the stats, it's already a career down year for Grubauer. Like, I think he will bounce back, and but that defense, something needs to happen. Something.
That's where Francis and the front office come in, is like, you have to get better at scouting players and find some dudes, find some guys that will come in here and play a physical game, especially in the wake of losing Brandon Tanev. Find some dudes who will come in here and play good defense, as well as investing in your offense. Because if we can segue into that, the offense has been just as bad. The power play has been probably
Oh
the
my god.
biggest Achilles heel of this team all year.
Yeah, it speaks volumes when the Kraken do better 5-on-5 than with a man advantage every
Yeah,
time. Like that should not be happening. And I think Hackstall is part of the blame for that. I don't think he's definitely all of it, but the offense as a whole honestly has played about to my expectations. In all honesty, they've played about to my
yeah.
expectations
I don't,
because they were just so devoid of talent. I mean, outside of Gord and Eberly and maybe Schwartz, if you want to throw him in there, maybe with McCann, but beyond those four, who you have? Ryan Donato?
exactly. Yeah,
Yikes!
it's just a bunch of depth pieces and low risk, low reward waiver claims, I guess. And so when you really start filling out a lineup card and you look at all four lines put together, it's like there's nothing exciting about this team. And it's just like maybe one or two core guys, like we mentioned, McCann and Gord. Those guys are exciting and those guys are fun to watch. But when there's no supporting cast, it just makes for an honestly, it just with the defensive struggles and Drieger and Grubauer, like overall now, when I look at this team now versus at the end of the expansion draft and the beginning of the season, they lost all of their appeal as a
Yeah,
fan.
yeah, they really have. And I think they do have some prospects coming along the way, especially if they get lucky in this year's draft lottery and get Shane Wright, because you'll have him coming up, you'll have Beniers coming up, and
Oh yeah,
basically a lot of those prospects you took in the
Baker
expansion
Evans,
draft.
defenseman. He's also an elite tier prospect. I liken all the time. I liken Matty Beniers to the kind of Julio Rodriguez of hockey. Honestly, just because I love that pick. I love Matty Beniers. I love everything he brings, the energy, and honestly, he really is like that Julio type personality and big potential offensive upside like that's a player that I love for the future, and especially if you can get him on the back half of a productive McCann and Gord. Now you're talking about a legitimate offensive core, but I think that's at least probably 1 to 2 years away, and I'm just not sure how those guys are going to factor into at least this short term window.
Yeah, I think definitely Beniers is something to be excited for. Like he's one of those guys that it's just like, oh yeah, we got it was really hard to screw up that pick that Seattle had, the number 2 pick last year to begin with,
Yep.
because they were either getting Beniers or Owen Power, who also
Right.
looks phenomenal right now. So yeah, I love Beniers. I think he will do great things in the Northwest, but
Yeah,
again,
and
it'll be a couple of years from now, at
yeah,
least.
and I
Excited to
think
see him in Coachella, though.
that's something interesting because like you have the expansion draft and it kind of gives your base core of NHL players. And while Francis definitely had some iffy picks and for sure botched some, he also got
Gavin
some right
Baylor.
there. And the other thing that I point to is just the NHL entry draft. He nailed that. His
Oh
first
yeah,
2 round picks are Beniers, as we just talked about, and Riker Evans, who is just as good as Beniers, but defensively. And again, enormous potential for him. Plays a great physical game, and everything I've seen, like that's a stud in the making. So, couple of great picks for Francis in the NHL entry draft, and that's honestly just kind of how he'll have to keep going is use the team's struggles to bring you more of these guys. I mean, that's what we've seen the Mariners do.
Yeah.
And
I was just about to say, go the
yeah.
Mariner route, build up that farm system and make it the best in the league, and then have once those prospects
and
start
once
coming
you
up.
have those prospects who are right on the precipice, then go out and strike in free agency, then go out and get a Philip Grubauer, then go out and get line depth. So it's just I struggle with the expectations of the season, because I get there was a like a load of excitement for this team, and it's just worn off, and it's kind of disappointing how quickly it's worn off. So yeah, it's kind of disappointing seeing how excited the city and the region was to actually have a NHL team to root for.
Yeah, it's really sucked, honestly. But I mean, people will still go to games. People will still. I mean, again, crappy hockey is better than no hockey, in my opinion.
Yeah, that
at
is
least,
true.
At least we have it.
Exactly. And who knows? I mean, again, like we just laid out the way for them to kind of work into their success, but it takes, and mostly it takes a while. So with that said,
slightly less bad in the Seahawks.
Slightly less ugly, but also just kind of bad at the same time in the Seahawks. So
yeah.
Kind of, what was your
Kraken have been ugly, Seahawks have been bad. Yeah. Like they've like obviously last year was completely disappointing. And that being said, it's really hard to look at this team with everything going on with Russell Wilson and all of the crap around that, which we will get into.
Yeah,
but it's hard to look at this team and not see them as playoff contenders either, right? Because if you look at the rest of the NFC, you have in the North probably the most competitive division outside of your own, which with the West, which who knows, honestly. Like it is truly the wild West.
This is the toughest division in the NFL, I think.
Oh, bar none. We were the only team not to make the playoffs last year from the West. Like that's just
how cutthroat it is. And honestly, like,
and if Russell Wilson gets hurt, you could make the argument that every single team from the West could have made it.
Yeah.
Could have made that argument.
For sure, yeah. I mean, there were a lot of other issues. You can't just say, oh, if Russell Wilson.
Oh yeah, no,
disagree
absolutely.
With that in that you can't definitively say that, oh, if Russell Wilson doesn't get hurt, the Seahawks make the playoffs. Like, there's a lot of other pieces that didn't go their way, or they just mismanaged and kind of kicked their own playoff hopes.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. But again, I still see this team as a playoff contender for next year because they did get a new coordinator. Now,
yes, we should discuss that.
Now, Clint Hurt, I'm not really sure how to judge yet. I like what he's saying, specifically about playing less zone and a little bit more man, because good God, we just could not cover a screen to save our lives last year. We really couldn't.
Yeah.
So if we're going to be a bit more aggressive, I like that.
Yeah, and that's the thing, as when you say like judging Hurt yet, it's tough to make these calls in the off season, especially when a large majority of coaching hires happen in the off season, and so you don't really know what you have with Clint Hurt yet, and so you have to wait, and maybe you see it'll take next year.
Yeah, I think next year will be the definite tell.
Great or not. And then for the Seahawks specifically, I think next year is a kind of make or break year
It really
because
is.
because you can't say, oh, let's run it back. You can't just keep saying, oh, let's run it back with Pete and Russ, because eventually they're going to run out. Their contracts are going to run out, and you're going to be stuck, and you're going to be like, well, now what? So I think next year is a big make or break year for the Seahawks if they want to continue with this leadership group. I think honestly, anyone's better than Ken Norton. So
Really.
Hurt has got that going for him, but I'll be interested to see what happens next year, because I think again, with this core of players and this core of management, 2022-23 will be make or break for the Seahawks.
I 100% agree with that. And I also agree that anyone's better than Ken Norton. I mean, I called him a handicap all last year, and I did that for a reason. He couldn't have his corners cover a single person. It felt like they were practicing social distancing more than they were actually covering receivers and doing their jobs. I mean, you did have guys like DJ Reed who did great, and Sidney Jones did pretty okay, and Troy Brown even was phenomenal before he got hurt. But I really like the hire of Hurt. We'll see where it goes. But I also agree in the fact that Pete and Russ, Pete's not getting older. He's 71. He's 71 right now. How much longer do you want him, a 71-year-old, the oldest coach in the NFL, as your guy?
Well, yeah, I mean, we saw some of that. We definitely saw a lot of that last year, and how like some of his play calls were very iffy. But then again, I also hate to bring this up, but like he did call that one certain play that we won't talk about in a certain Super Bowl, but especially getting older, it goes back to like this upcoming season. I think no matter what, coming in, no matter what they do in the off season, well, actually, I take that back because that will impact this off season. But I think the Seahawks should treat this off season and next year as if it's make or break, like it's go time or we're done.
Yeah,
because honestly, it is.
Yeah, their window is getting closed, and it's getting closed fast. I mean, Russ is under contract until, I think, 2024 or something like that. And with all of the rumors around him leaving, which, by the way, let's just get this out of the way right now. Yeah, I think that's complete and utter dog crap. He's not, okay? Yeah. He's not.
Yeah, I see it all the time. No, he's not leaving. I still think, I say it's make or break year, but I think they still have at least something left in the tank with Pete and Russ. And honestly, it's worth a go. I mean, you've made the playoffs except outside of this season, you've made the playoffs, the last 10 straight years. You've had 2 Super Bowl appearances, and you've been a consistent powerhouse, which is hard to do. That is so hard to do in any sport. I mean, so to just continually throw out the idea that, oh, the Seahawks are going to willingly dismiss their franchise QB after one bad season is very questionable to me.
I mean, these rumors have been going on for 2 years now, like this, but it's just getting ridiculous. Okay, yes, I am aware that Russ doesn't have an O-line here. Yes, I'm aware that is definite need on this team, and we'll address that in a bit. But at the same time, he is the best quarterback this franchise has ever seen, and it's honestly not even close. The only guy that I can think of that's on Russ's level is Jim Zorn from the 80s.
Yeah, I've not heard that. Now I'm gonna be completely honest. I've not even heard of him.
Exactly. But he is easily the best quarterback this franchise has ever had. Why on earth would you trade him?
Exactly.
Why? And
Exactly.
even if you did decide to trade him, where would he want to go? The best place would be Denver, obviously, with the team that they've assembled there, but they're probably getting Aaron Rodgers, in my opinion.
Yep.
Like, let's face it, they're more interested in Rodgers with hires of Hackett
Right.
and a lot of their coaches than they are in Wilson.
Exactly.
Now,
And
if they
if we
don't
can,
get
if
Wilson,
we can
don't get
give it,
Rodgers, do I see them potentially coming after Wilson? Yes. Do I see Seattle even budging remotely? No. They've stated that they're not trading Russ. And
yeah,
Russ has also
exactly.
stated he wants to be here.
And for
So
and from Denver's perspective, how much would you be willing to go? It kind of reminds me of Jose Ramirez and the Cleveland Indians because everyone's saying, "Oh, are they going to trade him? Are they going to trade him? The Blue Jays are contender. The Mariners are right there. They could make a splash deal, but he's under contract for 2 more years. Cleveland does not have to trade him at all, and they probably aren't. To be honest, they probably won't. So to get him, you have to think about you're prying this guy from, in this case, the Seahawks, or again the comparison being Jose Ramirez. You have to pry this guy from his franchise team. So what is that going to cost you? I mean, you're talking about enormous sums of prospect capital and money. And are the Broncos willing to deal that out? Are they willing to deal that out when they can just go get Aaron Rodgers?
well, it'll be probably the same price if they get Rodgers or Wilson. But either way, they're probably going to win now. And it's worked out for some teams. I mean, you
Yeah,
can
that's
look
true.
this past year with Matthew Stafford going to the Rams
Right.
and
Yeah,
them winning the Super
that's a
Bowl
good
there. So, but still, it is going to cost you a lot because John Schneider got a king's ransom and then some from the Bears last year for an attempted trade at Russell Wilson, and he turned that down. And that was what, 3 first-round picks, a third, Akeem Hicks, and Kyle Fuller.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
But Russ is worth that, so I agree with turning that down.
Exactly.
So unless you're willing to offer more than that, I don't think you're going to get Russ. And I definitely don't think you're getting him for cheap if you do.
Exactly. And if you are offering, like, if they do consider, that's mortgaging your future more than the Rams did for this Super Bowl. So if you do that, you better have a dang good team because you'd be giving up a big chunk of your team's future.
I'm going to say it right now. If the Seahawks do end up trading Russ to Denver or anywhere else, you might as well just blow the whole thing up. Completely tear the entire thing down. The only players I would possibly keep would be DJ Reed if we re-sign him and DK Metcalf. Everyone else not on a rookie deal can go. Just leave.
But again, they won't do that, and I think they've still got something left in the tank, which kind of brings me to my next point in their competition, because the NFC West is loaded right now, and it's a really, really tough division to make the playoffs in, let alone win. I mean, so obviously there's the Rams. They're kind of the top dog right now, and it's going to be very, very tough, I think, for Seattle to track them down. I don't see it happening. But if you kind of go down the list here, the Cardinals are an interesting situation because what are they going to do with Kyler Murray? Are they still going to be able to maintain their success, especially with the way they kind of tailed off this season. So what's going to be the storyline there? And then the 49ers, who almost made it to the Super Bowl this year, they're obviously still very good, and they're going to run it back. So I think it's a big challenge ahead of Seattle and Pete Carroll and John Schneider. Can they do it? I don't know, but they've probably can make a decent run at it, maybe with a wild card, because
Yeah.
two, 3 wild cards, so they could make the playoffs. But it's just a tough division, man.
It really is. Like, this is maybe the toughest the NFC West has ever been. I mean, you obviously have the Super Bowl winning Rams with McVay and Aaron Donald. Who knows if Von Miller or Odell Beckham is coming back? They probably will, because if they do restructure a lot of the contracts they have with guys like Stafford and Kupp and basically a lot of those key pieces, if they extend them, which, let's be honest, they probably will. But then you're looking at $70 million in cap space for the Rams, which is more than enough to bring like Odell and Vaughn back. So I think they will definitely be the kings of that division for a pretty long time. God help us all. The Cardinals are really intriguing because, again, we don't know what's happening with Kyler Murray. And even then, they have a big free agent to sign in Chandler Jones. Not to mention not that much cap space. I think they have around $3 million in terms of cap. And then the Niners, who's playing quarterback? Is it Jimmy G? Is it Trey Lance? We don't know. That team is very good. Don't get me wrong. Deebo Samuel will continue to haunt my nightmares. And that defense is just stupendous. But who's playing quarterback? Exactly. Who's playing quarterback? That's my question with the Niners. But I can absolutely see this team still getting a wild card spot.
Well, basically, the NFC, as far as the playoff picture, looks pretty open for a wild card. I mean, who knows? I mean, NFL playoffs are honestly, they're pretty predictable, other than like the Bengals, but they're usually pretty predictable. So I could see maybe like a divisional appearance this year at probably, okay, I'll put it this way. The ceiling for the 2023 Seahawks would be, for 2022, sorry, I think would be divisional loss. Would you agree? Because I don't think they have enough left in the tank to make it very much farther than maybe winning the wild card round before a divisional exit at best.
Yeah, I mean, Pete Carroll could have completely fooled us. It also depends on what happens in the offseason, because, again, it depends on who they retain, who they get. But yeah, I'd agree about divisional loss, conference championship loss at absolute best. Yeah. But unless they get like a massive blockbuster signing that ends up panning out, not like the Jamal Adams thing, then, I mean, yeah, that would change things. Yeah. But yeah, I think if we get at least some of the guys in free agency, specifically at center or at left tackle, to help develop Stone Forsythe still, because as much as I love Stone Forsythe, we need somebody to kind of compete with him for that spot.
Yeah, for sure.
I think guards are set, but if you get a center and some running back help, then you're good. Yeah. There, and then defensively, you just need corners.
Yeah, and then another thing would be, I would say, is get Russ some protection. Is another big thing for the team, but
which would help with a new O-line.
Exactly.
Again, guards didn't play terribly bad, but center, we definitely need a new one, especially with guys like Bosa and Donald. We definitely need somebody good on that left side that's not 36 and declining. So yeah, that's about it for Seahawks. Now let's get
Yeah.
to the real good.
Yes, let us get to the good because man, is it exciting, but wait, because there's always a thing with Mariner baseball.
There's always a catch
There's
with this
always
godforsaken
there's
team.
always a caveat when it comes to the Mariners. So what a turnaround, man. As we head into a year, have you ever been this excited for any season that you've ever seen? Just is this? I mean, this is going to sound like a softball, so. but this has to be the most excitement you've ever had, right?
I honestly think so, and I've seen my fair share of Mariner baseball. I've obviously wear the jersey. I've been a fan for a long time. I saw Felix throw his perfecto live and went bonkers. It was great. And yeah, that end of the year, even though the Mariners didn't make it, like that was just a fun year.
Yeah. It was
a phenomenal year.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, you saw the city come out. Like that stadium behind me here.
That stadium was the most full I've ever seen it.
Yeah, it was a sellout. It was a legitimate sellout. I think the capacity is like 47 something thousand people at say T-Mobile. There was at least 47,000 people there at the game, and it was rocking. It was quite the experience. It was quite the series. And although, yeah, they lost Mitch Haniger in the second to last game, that was probably
something else.
That was probably the biggest reason. And then to follow that up with the article he wrote for the Players Tribune. I don't remember if I told you that.
Yeah,
or you
with the whole we're gonna end the drought.
Yeah. To write such an impassioned piece, how can you not keep that guy around? And honestly, yeah, he wants to be here. Look, he wants to be here. He's going to play a role in 2022. After that, it kind of gets murky with his future, just because the future of this team is so much more. I mean, you've got the number one minor league organization in all of your sport, according to the leading magazine in the sport.
And in offense, and at outfield, you're just loaded with prospects. I mean, you have J-Rod, you have Kelnick, you have Kyle Lewis coming back. You also have Trammell and Jake Fraley at your disposal. So
yeah, those guys I think are more prone to trade. Trammell and Fraley, just because they haven't quite shown it. And Jake Fraley still has value, and so he could be a valuable piece, and Trammell has top prospect status. But Kyle Lewis, I don't think you can't bank on Kyle Lewis. You can't bank on Kyle Lewis in 2022, just because the injury with his knee and his overall health.
Yeah, I think Haniger will still be here in 22, but in 23, you have to start having that conversation about trading him.
Well, he's a free agent after this season.
So, is he?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the Mitch Haniger situation, it's one of those things where I liken it to the Abraham Toro Kendall Graveman trade, right? Because here you've got a controversial decision coming up at a very important time for the franchise, and important time for the fan base too. And Jerry DiPoto, the general manager, he's going to have to make a decision that the fans don't like. I mean, because honestly, Haniger is 32 years old. He's still hitting well, which is probably the most important thing nowadays is you look for the bat first and then figure out defense and positioning later. But he's he's on a trajectory that will have him at a full-time DH by the end of his career. And that to be honest, happens with a lot of good players. Towards the end of their career, they just tail off and then become like a first baseman DH. But Dipoto's gonna have a decision, and I think if he wants to stay, great. We can probably make something work. But if he wants to explore his options, I think we should be fine with that and say, hey, do what you want, man. Do what's best for you. Do what's best for your family. And I think that's going to get a lot of backlash from the fans. But what's going to happen is Dipoto is going to go out and make another savvy move in the wake of potentially losing Haniger. He's going to make another move, and then everyone's going to walk back their words of doubting Dipoto because he did it. They did it with Kendall Graveman and Abraham Toro, and they're going to end up
They've been walking back their words about Dipoto for years. I mean, you can look all the way back to the Cano Diaz trade, which regardless of how Kelenic and Dunn turn out, we totally won that. We totally won.
That is by far the franchise's biggest win trade in their history. I mean, go back, there's a whole bunch of bad trades that finally you get this blockbuster core creating good trade. But yeah, I mean, it's exciting time for the fans, exciting time for the team, the city. And here comes the lockout. And it's just like killing all the momentum.
It's so infuriating too, because it could have totally been all avoided. It could have all been avoided if they could just agree on something.
It's not like they're not. Yeah, actually, that's a good way to put it, because the thing is, the difference between a lockout and a strike, for those that don't know that might be seeing this, a lockout is initiated by the owners. The players' strike of 1994, that was the owners pushing for a salary cap, and the only way the players felt like they could do something is to go on strike. And so they lost half a season and well into 1995, but that was player initiated. This was Major League Baseball and the owners saying, this is a strategy. We will pressure the players into a deal, and it's not working. The players aren't pressured. And it's honestly, in Major League Baseball, Rob Manfred and the owners are the only one who can fix this. They're the only one who can fix this. They set multiple deadlines for themselves. And it's just unfortunate, because especially after that season, I mean, at least the Mariners were able to sign the Cy Young winner. They were able to bring Robbie Ray in and Adam Frazier, two very good moves that
moves that I actually really like.
Exactly, yeah. And it'll help create depth. And now the Mariners rotation looks a lot scarier going into the year. Even if they trade for a starter and lose some of that young depth, you're looking at Robbie Ray, Marco Gonzalez, Chris Flexen, a potential trade candidate like Frankie Montas or Tyler Mahle, Luis Castillo, etc. Logan Gilbert. And then you throw in George Kirby, Matt Brash, who came up at the end of the year but didn't pitch. I don't know what that was about. That was kind of weird, to be honest. And you look at this with a trade. Even without a trade, they've got like 9 or 10 guys that they can turn to in the regular season this year, if they're, depending on how much there is of a regular season. They've got 9 or 10 guys that they can turn to. How many other teams in baseball can say that they have 8 to 9 to even 10 starting pitcher options that they can turn to throughout the season.
Not many.
Exactly. Yeah. So and you add a veteran experienced arm, you add a Chris Bryant who makes all the sense in the world. You add or a Trevor Story. Again, that
I'd take either. Sense. I really would take either.
Yeah. Interchangeable. I think Bryant makes more sense at the moment, even though he provides less offensive upside. I mean, you start adding these guys, and now you've kind of got the Astros like watch your six, Houston, because we're not far behind you. The team finished 5 games behind the Astros in 2021. Obviously, there's negative 51 run differential, but then, the whole fun differential and theme of the Mariners, Ted Lasso, believe. But you can't. And the thing that I see around social media and Mariners community is, and baseball community in general, is, oh, they were good. Sure, they got lucky, but they can't do that again with a negative run differential. Yeah, they can't do it again with a negative run differential, but A, they didn't get lucky, and B, they're going to improve. Like, they will sign a big free agent. There's no question.
Chris Bryant
did. They
already lost Kyle, but Chris Bryant, I think, should fill those shoes fairly nicely. You still have Haniger. I think if Kelenic can do what he did in September, he is going to be a problem.
Yes.
And then you have Kyle Lewis coming back, which you can have him as DH for basically the entire year if you want. Yeah, but he should at least still provide that phenomenal bat. And then you have Ty France, Mr. Consistent. If JP can develop a little bit of a bat, we know he has the glove. And then you have Adam Frazier if he can rebound. So you have hitters on this team. It's a question of consistency now.
Yeah, to some degree, I agree with that. I think just the thing they need is more power. And Trevor Story has more power than Chris Bryant if we're talking about free agents. But yeah, they got a good average and on base guy, which they also needed in Adam Frazier. So he'll fill the second base hole nicely. Right now the biggest priority, third base when the lockout ends, obviously. Also, center field is an issue because Kelenic, you would think Kelenic can play there, but he had a lot of struggles last year in center. And so you kind of question his ability. You don't question his athleticism, but you question his route reading, his fly ball percentage and all that stuff. You kind of question that. And a lot of these guys are corner guys. So maybe if you're the Mariners, you do get involved with a Seiya Suzuki or someone like that. Maybe you call Pittsburgh about Brian Reynolds, even though that would absolutely.
God, could you imagine this team with Brian Reynolds?
It would be scary. It would be scary. But it's kind of like the Russell Wilson trade talks. Like,
it'll probably never happen. No.
I mean, it is Pittsburgh, but like, if you do it, you're gonna have to bust the bank. Like, that farm system is gonna go by the wayside if you choose to pry. Again, we're using the word pry because that's what it is. He's got like 5 or 6 years of team control in Pittsburgh. So you'd have to pry him from the Pirates, which is going to be an insane amount.
Unless Jerry can swindle the Pirates organization, then I don't think he's coming.
I mean, he got the Mets.
He did get the Mets. He has owned the Mets multiple times. But yeah, dude, Brian Reynolds on this team would just be unfair with that outfield. Like that would just be dumb.
But honestly, center field isn't that much of a priority.
Yeah, because I think Kelnick, all things considered, he was a rookie. I think.
That's another thing. He definitely had some offensive struggles that I think carried over to the field, which didn't help. I think once he gets going and really starts hitting this year, I think he'll be fine in center. Like, yeah, he's an outfielder.
I think he did pretty okay at center.
Yeah. I mean, he wasn't
like elite there by any stretch of the imagination.
He had some bad moments, but I think he can be fine. The other thing to note is that we talk about Chris Bryant and Trevor Story, Carlos Correa, all that. These guys are going off the board like that. As soon as the lockout ends, it's going to be like NBA free agency. It's going to be baseball. Yeah, no,
it's going to be insane.
Everywhere. Free agency, trades, rumors, all in the span of a week. It's going to be an incredible week for baseball. I think fans should think about that more than the lockout, because that was something that I heard from Michael Kay on the Yankees on Talking Yanks, John Boy Media. I heard him say that, and it's a good point, because like you think about how dark of a spot baseball is in, but then you think about, well, hey, what's it going to be like after this thing is done? Because the season's not going to start immediately after.
Yeah, you're going to have a good month before the season starts.
That's not it. Yeah, it doesn't. It's going to be at least a month of players ramping up. But for that first week after, it's going to be
insane,
chaotic. So I can't wait to see what the Mariners do. And honestly, I have a hard time envisioning this team not making the postseason in 2022 between the deadline, free agency week, whatever call-ups of George Kirby, Julio Rodriguez. I really have a hard time seeing this team not in the playoffs come October.
I do too, especially if there's expanded playoffs like they're talking about. Because if they expand to 6 or 7 teams, consider it a lock pretty much.
Yeah. Well, something interesting I heard, if there's no deal in place by Monday, as of this recording, Monday the
28th.
28th, yep. Yeah. 28th.
That'll mean
Monday
no
the
game.
28th. If there is no deal, the players will hold back expanded playoffs from the owners. So that's kind of interesting. I don't know. I really don't think there's going to be a deal on Monday. Just because of,
I think there's too little time and too much ground to make up between both
exactly.
sides.
They're so far apart on money. And that's all this lockout is. It's money.
It really is at this point. I mean, you have the draft lottery thing, but I don't think that should be too much of an issue.
No, that's not a...
Have it like the first 5 or 6 picks and call it a day.
Yeah. Pretty much the big issues are the collective bargaining tax and players and 0 to 3 year Major League Service Time player salaries. So that's like your rookie. That's like your Kelnicks, your Rodriguez's, your JP Crawfords.
And then there's the pre-arb bonus pool thing.
Exactly. But that's less of a factor. But the biggest things, and they're still like hundreds of thousands of dollars apart, like almost millions apart on that. And each side is only coming down 5 million. So at this rate,
is not going to get anything done.
It's definitely not going to happen by Monday of all days. So
I mean, we'll see. Hopefully, progress is at least made. They are going to be meeting every day until that point.
They should be meeting. I think they should be meeting at the moment as we speak. They should be. I could be wrong on that. But yeah, it's hard to see the 2022 season starting on time. And the worst part is this is all the owner's fault. It's all the owner's fault. And anyone who tries to paint it differently. They're just wrong. They're just flat out wrong. It's all on the owners who instituted the lockout. They pretended like the players haven't picked up the phone. What, I don't even know what they're doing, because when you think about it, think about this. The owners' three biggest revenue, because they're all about money. So think about where their money comes from. Opening day, the All-Star game, and the postseason and the World Series. Those are the three big things that make the owners money. So why would they choose to shoot themselves in the foot and lose more money by delaying the season over raising player salaries? Like, pay your players a little bit more. So what? Like, don't you want to make more money? Pay your players more so that you make more money.
Yeah.
I don't understand it, man. I
don't either. But I think, again, it only takes one thing to break it.
Yeah.
To strike a deal. And hopefully when that happens, we get baseball back.
We will. Yeah, we will. No matter what. They won't lose a whole season. They can't do that. But
it would kill the sport.
It's already on a downward trajectory, baseball as a whole. But I mean, if they
lost a season, it would be killed.
Yeah, it would.
We could be talking end of MLB.
It would. I remember you told me you texted me the other day. You said you were watching a NASCAR race.
Yeah, Daytona.
I honestly think the future of baseball is very similar to NASCAR, especially at this rate with the lockout and just the way the game is being managed. It's headed to become NASCAR. It's like the only people who watch it are like the diehardest of diehards. And it's like other people
would be just extremely
turn it on
sad.
And flip the channel. Like, they just see it and keep scrolling. So unfortunately, that is the state of the game. It makes me sad because we've come so far with the Mariners. We've been through so much as a fan base, and now we have an opportunity. We have a legitimate opportunity to win multiple World Series. There is an opportunity here for the Mariners to become a dynasty, win multiple World Series, and it gets shot in the foot by this.
Yep.
It's just a bummer, man.
It's like the M's are cursed or something. I swear to God.
Yeah. All right. Well, that has been a very enjoyable, again, this
and long episode. Jeez.
And yeah.
We ran for basically 2 hours.
So it's been a pleasure, man. Once again, thanks for tuning in to Seattle Sports Secrets. I'm Ryan Hanna. I'm going to go ahead and sign off.
Go Hawks, go M's, go Kraken. We'll see you sometime in the future. We don't know when.
Yeah. All right. Later, man.
Later.